Students with limited proficiency in English pose a major challenge to U.S. public schools. There are over 5 million students in grades K through 12 whose English skills are less than proficient, many of whom may be speaking a different language at home than at school. Today we will look at 3 pieces of legislation that have affected English education and how they have impacted English language learners. The first law we will look at is not one aimed at ESL students, but surprisingly, one that attempted to address a specific population of native speakers of English. In 1996, the Oakland, California School Board passed a highly controversial Ebonics resolution, declaring Ebonics the primary language of the African American students in its school. The legislation was passed as a result of rampant underperformance of African American students with the intention of validating these students' primary language, catering to their language needs, and hopefully ultimately improving their academic performance. Immediately, the resolution came under intense attacks, claiming it labeled African American students as linguistic foreigners, and the intense criticisms, Oakland quickly changed its stance and revised the resolution. The revised resolution greatly watered down the initial efforts to legitimize Ebonics as an alternative to Standard English, and instead sought to facilitate a plan of action for teachers to transition Ebonics speakers to Standard English. The rhetoric evolved to present Ebonics as wrong and Standard English as correct. Ideology of this type greatly holds students back. Teaching students that their home language is wrong is not an effective strategy beneficial to English language learners. This shows how difficult it can be to make accommodations for minority populations of learners. Just a few years after this, President George W. Bush passed No Child Left Behind. Title III of No Child Left Behind stated that its purpose was to provide a plan of action for ensuring that limited English proficient students met the same standards as fully English proficient students. While No Child Left Behind did provide a number of guidelines for helping to improve instruction and assessment for English language learners, it was not without its faults. This legislation contains strong implications for Ebonics speakers and other traditionally thought of populations of English language learners. Title III did outline a number of points beneficial to ELL students, including developing and improving accountability systems, developing cultural understanding, improving language proficiency, conducting research for ELL education, and strengthening professional education. But critics argued that NCLB suffered from an over-reliance on standardized testing, with ELL students suffering the most. Even with various accommodations for ELLs, these tests still favored the majority population and brought with them major pitfalls for ELL students. This brings us to our final piece of legislation, the Common Core. While the Common Core state standards have only been adopted by 42 of the 50 U.S. states, the initiative plays a large role in shaping education for the majority of U.S. students in public schools. Common Core standards do have their good qualities. The standards are research-based and encourage a better way of teaching and learning. But they also provide significant challenges for English learners, not only in English class, but in math, science, and other subjects as well. In math, the Common Core emphasizes complex word problems, which can be daunting for students with limited English abilities. The standards require students to explain their answers in writing, requiring a much broader and more sophisticated vocabulary than many English learners have. Schools must now try to address these challenges by incorporating new strategies into both their English and math lessons to broaden students' vocabularies and increase their ability to not only answer difficult questions, but to be able to explain their answers as well.
Created using Powtoon.